Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1100 of our daily content grind. Today, I was faced with two video options that were presented to me. One via current events, the other being from a current event. Point being, I could have taken a low road or a high road today. Now, to take the low road, I feel like would be a little bit adversarial, which I kind of not in the mood for right now. And also, it's a developing situation, and I want to give it time to mature a little bit further. There is potential for this to have calmed down, or inversely, I'm probably just going to talk about it on the news roundup tomorrow, because it is kind of agitating me. So I am going to get that done, covered, and all that. So that said, we decided to take the high road and do the silly idea that came to mind thanks to the recent Hasbro PulseCon stream. Evan from the Transformers team was showing off the brand new Armada Wheeljack, and it's a lovely figure, looks absolutely great. But as he's taking it away, he makes a comment of, "Thank you, Sideswipe, who will use another 20 times. I'm paraphrasing. But the important part is that he actually suggested that they will get 20 more uses out of a mold that has already been used over a dozen times. So, you know what? I'm here for you, Evan. I'm going to back you up on this one, and I'm going to show that it is possible. That a 20 more uses out of Sideswipe is a feasible goal. And I'm going to show you 20 things you can potentially do with that mold. And just to start us off on a really good foot here, I'm going to go ahead and knock 6 off the board right away. Because I've always said on this channel that that mold is a perfect chance to do brand new spy changers. Think about this. It's the exact same body type. It's the hood that becomes the front of the chest. It's the top of the car that becomes the back. It's the underside of the rear of the vehicle that becomes the front of the legs. That's a spy changer. That's Sideswipe. You know, they transform very differently, but they end up in exactly the same situation. So you could absolutely adapt just about any spy changer design to the Sideswipe mold. Technically, if we're going to be super generous about this, I could have actually included every spy changer. Keep in mind, spy changers are born off of the G2 GoBots, and there were a ton of those released. And then 6 spy changers that were in the cartoon, 4 additional spy changers from previously unreleased G2 molds, and then tons of repaints of all 10 of those spy changers released across RID and eventually Universe. And then there's even the room to go for like the unreleased G2 spy changers that never made it past the prototype stage, like the Jeep. All of this is on the board. All of this is on the table. I could have gotten 30 uses out of the Sideswipe mold just from spy changers and G2 GoBots. But for the sake of nostalgia and for the sake of recognition and recognizability, I think the only fair thing is to do just the main 6 from RID. Admittedly, Mirage will be weird because we're trying to turn, something akin to a Lamborghini into an Indy car. But if they did it in RID, in car robots, I think they could do it out of this mold. It's not undoable for just reusing the transformation structure. And likewise, Ironhide, a pickup truck, is going to be super awkward to do. But again, I think they can do it. He might come up like a very squat little lowrider, or look more like an old El Camino than an actual pickup truck. But you know what? We do what we must. And in some cases, it's worth the sacrifice. But no, you could absolutely get the 6 spy changers out of this. And I'm going to leave it there with one exception. Because the G2 GoBots did include a Sideswipe. So just for the sake of historical value, here is a Sideswipe toy that we do not have any other version of. That we've never revisited. We'll get him in there. Just so this color scheme and this design for Sideswipe is being used from an actual Sideswipe mold. Technically, we could have used G2 Optimus Prime, like the GoBot Optimus Prime, and made Sideswipe into an Optimus Prime mold. But you know what? I'm going to keep it just to the one that's named Sideswipe, and we're going to move on. because we could end up in Spy Changer land forever. So that's 7 off the board. We're only 5 minutes into this video. Let's go on to the current version of the mold, which is Armada Wheeljack. Like I said, animation accurate all the way through. Jet black, electric blue highlights, gold trim, looks amazing. But because it's so animation accurate, that absolutely leaves us room to do toy accurate. Similar to what I want done with Tidal Wave someday, I would love for them to do the same thing for this figure, where you do the same figure in, a dark gray rather than black. You do the yellow deco instead of the electric blue, and then you do what you did with Hot Shot, and you and the previous use of this mold for Shattered Glass Sideswipe. You pack it in with its minicon, like appropriately colored. You do it as one of those specialty packs, because those seem to do okay. That's, if that's what it takes to get the minicon out, fine. And then it's the right color for that minicon to just move over to your Armada Wheeljack if you have them both. It's options available to us, and I do like the idea of it. There is another use of this mold we can do, and Shattered Glass Sideswipe brings it to mind, and it is the unreleased Universe Drench. Now, it's not the same design. I know the colors are similar. G2 Sideswipe is based on the unreleased Drench figure, but there are distinct differences. For starters, the green is obviously much brighter than the more pale that ended up on Shattered Glass Sideswipe, but the biggest one being the brown that ended up being turned silver on the actual BotCon release. So there's, again, a way where we actually have plenty of room to actually do that version of the toy, and it is going to look visually distinct. If you are a Mad Lad, and Hasbro, I know you have Mad Lads working there, what you do is 2-pack this with a Hot Shot repaint, the brand new Generations Hot Shot repaint, into the smoke screen that he was going to be in this 2-pack with Drench, and you release them both together. Make it happen. The Lost Universe 2-pack could actually be a thing. That would be such a good Amazon or Pulse exclusive nonsense thing. I would buy it in a heartbeat. I genuinely would, because that's a fun set, and strangely enough, I like the Hot Shot in those colors. Let's look at the other side of things. Okay, what about other uses Sideswipe toys have had over the years, but have not been done with the Siege version? So for starters, that leaves us to BotCon Breakdown. I do like, because this is the first time that, the original BotCon exclusive was brought back as a full transforming figure. And I do think it does have some recognition for that. It's also important to note, this BotCon take on it with much brighter pink and some hits of bronze here actually does clash with the upcoming release that does purple and silvers instead. So we could actually have room for both to coexist on the shelves, or at least come somewhat close to each other without really infringing on each other's territory. They could absolutely both exist, especially if you're doing something, like one of the Walmart subsets, the capsule lines. If it really is a capsule line based on old BotCon toys, this is a potential way of releasing that. To just kind of close that off and go, it's specifically homaging this version of the toy. It's don't expect it to combine. This is a very specific thing, specific reference that we're doing here. But that means that this one is on the table. That also means that the G1 color scheme is also available to do. It's not the only time I've seen Sideswipe. No, keep in mind, we do have the episode The Masquerade, where Sideswipe does impersonate Breakdown, because both of them in G1 are Lamborghinis. So it does actually make sense for the two to coexist like this. So you could do it as a Masquerade homage, or you could just do it as a BotCon homage. I mean, I think both are actually qualified here. In that case, you might end up doing all of the Masquerade. It would be hysterical to me if you were to do if you do a Motormaster colored Optimus Prime, the last thing I want that Earthrise mold to do. You might be able to do take the Mirage mold and do it as a drag strip. Weird stuff like they used to do in the universe, the mid 2000s, to get homage Transformers out there. but like specifically based on that episode. It'd be hysterical. I would be interested in it. One more use out of that mold, and this one is a little bit weird, because this mold was also used for punch counterpunch. Now, hear me out. I understand this mold will not be able to do the punch counterpunch thing without extremely extensive remolding, to the point where you might as well just do a brand new toy. And frankly, we've got a modern punch counterpunch mold that I don't think you really need to try and outdo. That said, Counterpunch has a standalone toy. It was a subscription service figure. That means there is absolutely room for a standalone Punch to counter it, and fortunately, Punch is depicted as the Sideswipe version of the mold rather than the Sunstreaker version. That gives us the wiggle room we need in order to make it a viable release. So yeah, I think a standalone Punch could work. It's a goofy one. I will admit, it's a goofier one of these ideas, but I think it's fun. There's one more version of this mold that you wouldn't think has another usage, but we do actually have it. We could finagle one more use out of it, and that is the Gigawatt mold. And I pronounce it Gigawatt because that's how they pronounce Gigawatt in the movie. I think it's a fun reference. But however you pronounce it, the version of the DeLorean from Back to the Future 3 actually does have a lot of distinction from the version that was in 1 and 2. You have the train tracks, you have the darker colors because it's been through a lot more. You have the makeshift engine that's been built on the hood. There's other little details here and there that could separate it out. And then of course you've got all the changes you could make to the robot mode to give it more of a steampunk or Wild West aesthetic. It's a weird one to do, but it is a missing gap, right? Because the first one can be like the first or second one based on whether or not you have Mr. Fusion attached to it. But the third that has a lot more like sculpting differences, that one hasn't been represented yet. That one could absolutely fit the gap here. So we could get one more use out of Gigawatt, whatever you want to pronounce it as. So that one is also on the table. From here on, I admit, I'm starting to struggle a little bit because like I cut myself off from so many options with the Spy Changers. Marvel is an option because Sideswipe, due to coloring limitations, did appear in red and blue there. Just because like gray was harder to print. That dark gray to represent black was harder to print at the time, which is why a lot of colors are weird. It's all color printing limitations from the 80s. Point being, Sideswipe did have a somewhat different color scheme that's ever been represented. And I kind of always am down for the Marvel color schemes to kind of take center stage for a little bit. It is main Transformers continuity for a lot of fans. So the fact that it gets so little recognition is kind of shocking, especially when Hasbro's looking for every repaint of every toy they could possibly get. We just got a few G2 characters, like we got a nice run of them as Pulse exclusives. Here's another option that we could potentially have down the line. I would be down for this if it's packed in with a Marvel Soundwave. There's my caveat. I started looking into like weird background characters you could kind of use, just like weird oddities stuff. Like the Netflix series had a ton of generics in the background you could have done troop builders out of. You could have done more sparkless out of this one, either or. I'm not going to go into like every iteration, like there's an orange Sideswipe with a blue face in this shot. I'm not going to go into every iteration of every Sideswipe across that show you could have done. Needless to say, he was seen in the background in random colors a lot. Likewise, he showed up in Armada of all places. Now, granted, this could just be like a slightly off-color red alert, but there is something about this like light beige and maroon color scheme this one kind of has going on that I actually don't hate. Like there is something weird about it that I like, so I kind of wouldn't mind. Granted, they would never do the generics in Armada. Like all of those random G1 models that showed up, they would never do those because they appeared so briefly and didn't have any bearing on the story. They're just to fill the crowd, which, upsets me because there is a Blitzwing in one of those shots, meaning I will never get that color scheme. Also, cry for anyone who really likes Astro Train, and also the color yellow. You won't get that toy either. Nor will you get this purple Power Glide, because we don't even have a modern Power Glide toy at the moment. From here, I realize I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel to find random Sideswipe color schemes that showed up in various media, so I realize I have to start getting creative now, and we have to start thinking outside the box. Okay, what else can we do with a Sideswipe mold? What else can we do with it? Well, we can do what we did with a lot of the G1 toys when the movies came out and actually give him the movie color scheme. This is actually something that's stuck in my mind because we didn't have any silver version of that toy before, or of any like silver Sideswipe until we got to Gigawatt. So instead, if we want to keep it within Transformers, you could give him the movie Sideswipe homage treatment. You know, retool the head to be more Bayverse-esque, give him the silver and the dark gray color schemes. We did this before. eHobby did like bright green Ratchet, like using the G1 mold. They did the Black Ironhide. We have seen like G1 Skids done in neon green and orange for Skids and Mudflap. This is something that we've seen done before. And of course, a lot of G1 characters, a lot of the movie characters with G1 names rather, they do eventually get those G1 color schemes, so I think it's fair to go the opposite direction. I feel like you could do that, and the idea of doing generation-style movie toys is actually something that is worth exploring at some point. You know, I would love to see some of the good designs done in like more traditional aesthetic at some point. There's one suggestion I had in the past that I wanted to bring up here as well. If you were to do what they're doing now, which is taking BotCon characters and concepts and updating them, Dawn of Futures Past is one of the biggest ones BotCon ever did. You know, value-wise, I think it's like either the top value BotCon set there is, or like number 2 behind Shattered Glass. I haven't checked lately to determine which is which. Point being, I've already speculated this mold could be used for Cheetor. Because if you're going to make like the more generic Maximal style, like the 4-legged animal, then the idea behind it is to use the more generic Autobot, which is the sports car. So both of them just super fast roadster type characters. So you could do that out of Cheetor. You know, he could be the new Shattered Glass Cheetor for, Shattered Glass, Dawn of Futures Past. I don't even remember what Shattered Glass Cheetor looks like. See, other ideas I keep suggesting, I keep wishing Hasbro would do. Another big one for me is I would love a new take on modern alternators, which brings me to camshaft. Again, we have the body type we're looking for. Chest is the hood of the car. Top of the car is the back. Underside of the car are the legs. Getting a good camshaft toy out, we've speculated, is difficult because the G1 toy transforms so differently than any other Transformer. There really isn't an equal they could get another tooling out of. But if to do it out of like the alternator style of camshaft, with the blue, the prowl head, and all that, you could get a fun homage out of that. Obviously a Lamborghini is way more sporty than this vehicle mode. It looks, it's going to look way cooler is what it's going to do. But it's a fun little homage. And again, I'm always up for getting alternators back into rotation and get back into the toy shelf somewhere. With 19 down, I had one to go, and I wanted to go really overboard with this. I wanted to go completely out there. And once again, looking for whatever inspiration hits me. And again, looking for that body shape. What other transforming robot out there uses the hood of a car as the chest and the underside of the car for the legs in order to work for the Sideswipe aesthetic? I had to cross enemy lines. And I was met with several options. But the one I ended up picking is Baron Von Joy from the GoBots. I know he's a Porsche, but there's no jazz that's going to make that work. There's no jazz that's going to make that work. But you look at that, you cut off that big head, and you do have a Sideswipe type in the body. And again, we're looking at silver and red. Again, not a combination we have on a Sideswipe toy before. if you do some funky head that's like mostly like wide visor, I think it would still get that character across without technically interfering with any kind of GoBot or machine robo trademark. It's close, I will admit. But if you have these G1 GoBots that are currently being released, that we just got the 3-pack released, we've already had Bug Bite and Road Ranger for a while. If those could pass for GoBots, I'd absolutely think you could get one out of Sideswipe doing this. There's Hair Fiend as well. There is Psycho, who you'd have to license the car from Cobra. That's an anime, not, G.I. Joe, by the way. There's options there, because a lot of these transform the same way. And really, that's just all the stuff I could find based on stuff from the past. Obviously, there's a ton of color schemes that Sideswipe has never appeared in. There's no green Sideswipe. There's no purple Sideswipe. There's no orange. There are gaps. There are gaps that could have been filled with brand new characters, but I wanted to go with just the obvious ones. The one, and obviously some deep cuts too. But really just sticking within the franchise as much as possible without having to just just make new ones. Just make new colors, new characters. Who cares? But no, there you go. You got 20 more uses, Hasbro. I mean, you've got, how long is that mold going to survive? Like another 5 years before it starts breaking down? Okay, so you've got until 2030. By the end, by the time 2030 starts, I need those 20 other Sideswipes, okay? So I'm going to clock you, and we're all going to keep track together. But we got a long wait to see if that happens, so we will wait along together. So for now, that's what I have for you. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.